Up until now, Niger has been the political focus of Western nations like the United States, France, and other European nations. They have been threatening a military invasion of Niger under the guise of their proxies in Africa, such as Nigeria and the ECOWAS. Abdurrahmane Chiani, the head of Niger's military, said nothing during this time. However, no one was aware that he was truly planning and strategizing to deal a severe blow to everyone who opposed him and his nation. Instead of retreating when an invasion was threatened, he stepped up his aggressive military presence. He has more than that today, though. You wouldn't believe what Niger has done to punish France, Nigeria, the ECOWAS, Europe, and even the whole West. However, what is it? Furthermore, how can it deny the Europeans the wealth they have had for decades? Because Niger is creating history. Watch the entire video. Let's begin. The Western nations employed blackmail to thwart any plans by African nations to rise up and overthrow the Western monopoly. The roles have been reversed this time, though. Using the ECOWAS as its puppet, European nations, particularly France, were very interested in overthrowing the coup in Niger. They went so far as to threaten a military invasion of Niger if the coup was not overturned because they were so overconfident. But one thing slipped their minds. This time, Niger was strategically positioned at a high point, and with a single move, it might strangle France, the ECOWAS, Nigeria, and even all of Europe. Nigeria received the first punishment for being the largest Western puppet in Africa. Since Bola Tinubu, the president of Nigeria, was the one who proposed an invasion and requested permission from the parliament. As a result, he and his nation were singled out for punishment by the military junta in Niger. As a result, the Niger government formally declared that all exports of liquefied petroleum gas, also referred to as cooking gas, would be immediately suspended until further notice. According to Reuters, Niamey's officials emphasized the importance of giving indigenous production top priority in order to satisfy the nation's expectations. They explained that in the event of an excess, companies can request permission to continue exporting. Nigeria is the main recipient of Niger's gas exports, and the two countries in 2020 inked a memorandum of understanding on petroleum product importation. The deal was celebrated as a major breakthrough when it was formally signed in front of the corresponding petroleum ministers of state. But when Nigeria resisted Niger, tensions increased, resulting in the supply of LPG being cut off. For Nigeria, which desperately needs LPG, this presents a problem. It is essential to use liquefied petroleum gas for heating, cooking, and transportation. It used to cost 750 Nigerian naira a kilogram, but now it costs an unprecedented 1,000 naira. Due to changes in foreign exchange rates and global market activity, the Nigerian Association of Liquefied Petroleum Gas Marketers has issued a warning. The people of Niger have embraced the decision to use the excess LPG for a variety of domestic purposes. The governor of Niger State, Mohamed Bago, has purchased 200 compressed natural gas-powered buses in reaction to the loss of fuel subsidies and to alleviate citizens' transportation difficulties. At a dinner in Mina, the capital of the state, for members of the House of Representatives Press Corps, he announced this effort. The governor further revealed that the state government plans to directly buy paddy rice made in Niger State by entering into a memorandum of understanding with a Kano rice processing facility. Contracts for building a 566-kilometer road network throughout the state have been given, highlighting the fact that these projects constitute a component of the state's infrastructure development strategy. You should be aware that the Nigerian president's participation in pressuring ECOWAS to step in and conduct military intervention in Nigeria's internal affairs is connected to the increased focus on preventing Nigeria from obtaining Niger's LPG. He has formally asked the Nigerian parliament for permission to launch a military intervention in Niger. The decision to stop LPG supplies to Nigeria is only the first step, and it is clear that Niger views him with suspicion. In reaction to the president of Nigeria's acts, As a last resort, the West African regional grouping announced that military involvement in coup-led Niger was being considered. Nigeria cut off its electricity supply at the same moment, applying pressure to the country's coup authorities. While the group traveled to Niger for talks, West African military leaders convened in the capital of Nigeria, Abuja, to come up with a response. A week after the coup that rocked the already fragile country, this happened. In addition to imposing economic and financial penalties, the leaders of the Economic Community of West African States gave the coup leaders a week to restore Niger's legitimately elected president or risk using force. The ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Abdel Fattah Musa, emphasized that military action is the final resort. However, ECOWAS needs to be ready for the potential. An ECOWAS team began negotiations in Niger under the leadership of former Nigerian politician Abdus Salimi Abubakar. Nigeria, the military and economic superpower of West Africa and the current chair of ECOWAS, has pledged to take a firm stand against the rising number of coups in the region since 2020. Niger, Nigeria's energy provider, confirmed that Niger's electrical supply had been cut off as a result of the sanctions. Nigeria provides 70% of the power in Niger, one of the poorest nations in the world. Both Burkina Faso and Mali, which are governed by the junta, have warned that any military action in their neighbor would be considered an act of war against them. Moscow urged an immediate national conversation in Niger and cautioned that threatening to intervene won't reduce tensions or improve the situation at home. Russia issued a warning, declaring that a lengthy conflict will ensue from any military intervention in Niger. This response prompted the ICEO, a regional bloc, to announce its intention to form a standby force. The Russian Foreign Ministry voiced worries that the Sahel could become unstable as a result of such intervention. In contrast, the United States asserted that its Wagner mercenary squad was exploiting the unrest and backed attempts to restore the ousted leader, Mohamed Bazoum. Following this, pro-coup demonstrators, some of whom were holding Russian flags, demonstrated in front of a French military installation near the capital city of Niamey, while yelling anti-French and anti-ECOWAS slogans. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu said that no alternative was excluded, including the use of force as a last resort, even if the ECOWAS bloc stressed its willingness to find a diplomatic solution. The United States urged the junta to relent and permit the restoration of the nation's democratic constitution, but it did not specifically support military intervention. However, teaching Nigeria a lesson was not the only objective. It was agreed that Europe should be taught a lesson as well, since France and all of Europe seemed to be in favor of ECOWAS's military action in Niger. As a result, Niger made it very evident that the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline would be shut down if the Europeans interfered in Niger's domestic affairs. People in Europe were shocked by this warning and began to question how one pipeline could be so important to the continent. As you may be aware, the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline was first envisioned in the 1970s as a way to diversify the energy sources and improve the European Union's gas supplies, while lessening its reliance on natural gas from Russia. January 2002, by signing a Memorandum of Understanding, the Algerian National Oil and Gas Corporation, Sonatrach, and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation established the project's framework. The technical and financial feasibility of the pipeline was then confirmed by September 2006 after NNPC and Sonatrach collaborated with Penspan Limited to conduct a feasibility assessment in June 2005. On February 20, 2009, NNPC and Sonatrach decided to proceed with the joint venture arrangement and draft Memorandum of Understanding including 3 countries. An important milestone for the pipeline was reached on July 3, 2009 in Abuja, when the energy ministers of Nigeria, Niger, and Algeria signed an intergovernmental agreement. Because of its advantageous location halfway between Algeria and Nigeria, Niger was essential to this pipeline. Nigeria must build a pipeline from the nation to Niger, then into Algeria, and finally into Europe for the gas pipeline to be successful. The pipeline project will fail if Niger refuses to participate. A memorandum of understanding for the implementation of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project was signed on July 28, 2022, by the energy ministers of Algeria, Nigeria, and Niger, signifying significant advancements in the project's development. The pipeline starts in the Wari region of Nigeria and travels north through Niger until arriving at Hassi R'Mel, Algeria. It will join the current pipelines in Hassi R'Mel, such as Trans-Mediterranean, Maghreb-Europe, Medgaz, and Gulsi, which together supply Europe from the Mediterranean coast of Algeria. The Trans-Saharan gas pipeline is expected to be 4,128 kilometers long overall, including 1,037 kilometers in Nigeria, 841 kilometers in Niger, and 2,310 kilometers in Algeria. However, as the pipeline must unavoidably pass through Niger, if Niger cancels it, the entire pipeline will collapse. The pipeline is anticipated to have a diameter of 48 to 56 inches and an annual capacity of up to 30 billion cubic meters of natural gas. With an estimated $10 billion invested in the pipeline and an additional $3 billion for gas gathering centers, the initial projections called for it to be operational by 2015. It is envisaged that NNPC, Sonatrach, and the Republic of Niger will work together to build and run the pipeline. At first, it was planned for NNPC and Sonatrach to jointly own 90% of the shares, with Niger keeping the remaining 10%. Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos like this one. Let's proceed. A number of foreign businesses have indicated interest in taking part in the project, including Royal Dutch Shell, France's Total, Italy's Anispire, India's Gale, and Russia's Gazprom. The energy ministries of Nigeria and Algeria have made it clear that prospective partners need to provide more than just financial backing in order to participate in the project. The construction of a gas pipeline across the Sahara Desert was revived in June 2022 by Algerian, Nigerian, and Nigerian energy ministries. This ambitious project, called the Trans-Saharan Gas Pipeline, sought to link Algeria's Hassi R'Mel feeder hub along the Mediterranean coast with Nigeria's vast Wari hydrocarbon resources. Significant business prospects in design and construction will arise if this project takes off, necessitating the participation of numerous specialist suppliers. Particularly American vendors are keen to benefit from this massive undertaking. Numerous services and goods are available, such as trenching excavators, gas compression stations, pipeline sections, pipe layers, X-ray welding, pumps, fittings, management services, advanced high corrosion solutions, gaskets, flanges, valves, high-pressure flow control technologies, pipeline integrity testing and inspection, and flow monitoring and maintenance technologies. This indicates that the pipeline is a financial opportunity for the United States as well as a lifeline for Europe. However, Niger's willingness is what will determine whether this dream comes true. Therefore, the Trans-Saharan Gas Pipeline project, which is essential for its admission into the European gas market, faces significant obstacles as a result of Europe's attitude against Niger. Following the July military takeover in Niger, which prompted the Nigeria-led regional organization ECOWAS to contemplate forced deployment, the project's future is questionable. Therefore, the pipeline is in danger because of Nigeria, ECOWAS, and Europe, not Niger. Experts speculate that the Trans-Saharan pipeline may be connected to Algeria's strong interest in settling the Niger conflict. The issue is further complicated by the declarations of military regimes in Burkina Faso and Mali that they are prepared to assist Niger in the case of an ECOWAS invasion. Europe, Nigeria, Algeria, and ECOWAS must recognize that Niger alone is responsible for the pipeline's destiny. Rather than taking an aggressive approach that could jeopardize the pipeline, they ought to handle the matter amicably. It's important to realize that Niger may use its security agreement with Burkina Faso and Mali to defend itself if it finds itself in a tight spot. The first course of action after leaving the situation would probably be to make sure that the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline collapses at all costs. This emphasizes how important the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline is to Europe beyond just being a need. It's an essential necessity. Europe is actively looking for reliable alternate energy sources, particularly natural gas, given the tense energy relations with Russia. In this case, beyond its customary boundaries, the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline is a boon to Europe. The TSGP project promises to bring about a new era of energy reliability for Europe as energy poverty increases throughout the continent. When the $13 billion pipeline is finished, it will be able to move up to 30 billion cubic meters of gas per year from West Africa's Nigeria. After passing through Niger, the path continues on to Algeria. The TSGP gas will then either be loaded onto liquefied natural gas tankers for export or pumped via the Trans-Mediterranean pipeline, which runs beneath the ocean to Europe. Nonetheless, energy experts are generally skeptical, raising questions about the possibility of African gas entering Europe anytime soon. According to others, the pipeline might not be built in the upcoming 10 years. Isaac Badi, an Abuja-based Nigerian public finance expert, suggests that the main obstacle may be a lack of political will. Maybe the concerns are justified because, while Europe wants to import gas from Africa, it also has no intention of staying out of Africa's domestic affairs. Europe needs to learn a lesson in this situation. Given the tense relations between Europe and Niger, this mistrust is not without merit. It might be impossible to expect Niger, who is considered an adversary, to abide by the agreement. It's possible that both Europe and the Nigerian president failed to see the advantages that the pipeline will bring to all stakeholders. Algeria, on the other hand, has adopted a more practical stance, acknowledging the significant economic benefits that each nation could receive from the Trans-Saharan gas pipelines. Algeria puts long-term planning ahead of direct conflicts because it recognizes the enormous stakes. Unfortunately, by ignoring the pipeline's potential and drawing attention away from his nation's internal problems, the Nigerian president has made himself an easy target. He has instead adopted a hostile posture toward Niger, even requesting parliamentary consent to attack the border. Experts were taken aback by this action, which also put Nigeria's enormous energy reserves at risk of a profitable sale. The Niger Delta, a Nigerian coastal region on the Atlantic Ocean known for possessing Africa's greatest oil reserves, is predicted to provide the majority of the 30 billion cubic meters of gas. Nigeria is the continent's second-largest gas exporter after Algeria because to the delta's substantial natural gas deposits in addition to its abundance of crude oil. But these reserves are worthless without the Trans-Saharan pipeline. The possibility of suffering the greatest losses is particularly present for Europe. Approximately one-third of Europe's energy in 2021 came from natural gas emissions. This reliance permeated several industries, including as heating, transportation, and electricity generation. 76% of Europe's energy production in 2021 came from burning fossil fuels. More precisely, coal made up 11%, oil 31%, and gas 34%. Nuclear power made up the remaining 10% of the energy mix, with renewable sources like hydropower, solar, wind, and biofuels making up 14%. This implies that gas is necessary for Europe to survive. Due to years of cheaper Russian gas that Europe purchased, gas has become the primary energy source for all European infrastructure, particularly in Germany. Because of Russia's gas supply restrictions, Europe urgently needs alternate energy supplies, which emphasizes the significance of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. Interestingly, Europe is the biggest importer of natural gas worldwide. Together, Russia, Germany, the United Kingdom, Italy, and France used 10,073 terawatt-hours of gas-generated energy in 2021, or 3/4 of the continent's total energy supply. A number of European Union nations announced emergency measures involving significant financial commitments in response to the surge in energy costs brought on by Russia's war in Ukraine. Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, for example, unveiled a $65 billion plan to help people and companies deal with rising energy prices. A $17 billion aid package was also authorized by the Italian government to protect consumers and companies from rising consumer prices and energy costs. French President Emmanuel Macron underlined that the EU must step up its efforts to revamp the electricity market and expand renewable energy sources. The Trans-Saharan gas pipeline appears to be a feasible choice since the European Union currently faces an urgent need for a comprehensive solution to solve issues within its energy infrastructure. But the situation has become more complex as a result of France's meddling in other nations. The fact that Niger has threatened to shut off gas pipelines is significant because it implies that Europe and France still have time to disassociate themselves from the Niger coup situation. To show that it is serious about keeping its promises, Niger has already banned the export of LPG to Nigeria. There's no bluff here, as demonstrated by Niger's choice to stop exporting LPG, which is a major source of income for the country. In order to diversify its energy sources, Europe desired the Trans-Saharan pipeline. But for now, it's still its only choice. Europe is in the weakest possible situation as a result of the closure of the gas pipelines from Russia, Nord Stream 1 and 2. It has absolutely no bargaining power. Once heralded as essential to Europe's energy security, the Nord Stream pipelines are now partially cut, leaving the region vulnerable to a complex web of threats. Nord Streams 1 and 2 were not just channels for gas. They served as essential lifelines, meeting a significant amount of Europe's energy requirements. The economic giant of the continent, Germany, relied on Nord Stream for almost 35% of its gas, and other countries like Poland and Austria were also heavily dependent on it. Gas from Russia. Prior to the recent spike, it provided a more affordable option than alternatives like liquefied natural gas, boosting the European economy and keeping home energy costs under control. By reducing the possibility of interruptions in transit nations, the Strait Pipeline promoted energy security and guaranteed dependability. But Russia also gained considerable geopolitical clout as a result of this reliance, as the Kremlin shaped policy decisions and influenced regional dynamics by using gas exports as a political tool. However, in 2022, this cozy relationship started to fall apart. The flow of Nord Stream 1 decreased to a trickle while being plagued by technical problems and sabotage allegations. Meanwhile, in reaction to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Nord Stream 2 was idle, its accreditation stopped indefinitely. This abrupt change has revealed Europe's weaknesses and caused a break in its energy dependence. A major contributing element to Europe's ongoing energy crisis is the interruption of Nord Streams, which has resulted in a sharp rise in gas prices that is impacting both households and companies. The Trans-Saharan gas pipeline turns out to be the final resort at a time when Europe is in dire need of an energy source. As you can see, Europe is forced to depend entirely on the Trans-Saharan pipeline. But Niger is in total control of it. Since France is the primary actor seeking to undo the coup in Niger, it has also taken center stage among the European nations. This is due to the fact that the Trans-Saharan pipeline is essential for the entire European continent. This explains why European nations like Italy are already forsaking and denouncing France in favor of Africa. Giorgia Meloni, a right-wing politician and Prime Minister of Italy, charged that France was using a colonial currency to exploit African countries. According to Meloni, The French treasury receives half of Burkina Faso's exports. Only Niger's warning to halt the trans-Saharan gas pipelines seems to have set off a domino effect in Europe. The disturbing fact that European countries rely more on this gas pipeline than do African countries provides Niger tremendous negotiating leverage, something that has never occurred in Africa. What are your thoughts? Was it the appropriate decision for Niger to halt all preparations for supplying Europe with gas and oil? As a crucial link in the oil pipeline that leads to Europe, isn't it true that Niger has the potential to block off all of Europe and cause significant losses for Nigeria? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.